Welcome to this explainer. Okay, right off the bat, I need you to brace yourself because pretty much everything you think you know about spiritual enlightenment or, reaching some higher state of consciousness, it's about to be completely shattered. Today, we're diving into a deeply compelling account that literally flips the script on centuries of spiritual tradition. We are tearing down the mystical and replacing it with something raw, brutal, and entirely physical.
So let's dive into this. When we hear the word enlightenment, our minds instantly go to the expectation, right? We picture peaceful Buddhas meditating under trees, saints radiating divine bliss, just this serene psychological awakening that brings you ultimate peace. That's the mainstream myth we've all been sold. But the reality, at least according to the sources we're exploring today, is honestly more like physical torture. We are talking about a cellular blasting, a complete biological calamity. This isn't about feeling better, it is about a visceral, brutal transformation of the human body itself.
Section 1. The Enlightenment Myth.
To really wrap our heads around this radical shift in perspective, we have to look at the unprecedented experience of a guy named UG Krishnamurti. Now, he completely rejected all the traditional frameworks of spirituality, religion, psychology, the whole shebang. Instead, he laid out an account of a terrifying, overwhelming physical event that completely wiped out everything he was. And look at the exact word he used to describe his entry into what he called the natural state, a calamity. Just let that sink in for a second. He doesn't call it a blessing. No way. He doesn't call it a triumph or a joyful awakening. A calamity is a disaster, right? It's a devastating event. By choosing this exact, shocking word, Uji strips away all that romance and poetry we usually slap on to spiritual seeking. He's telling us point blank that what happened to him was destructive.
Section 2. The Biological Calamity.
And that brings us to a major pivot in how we understand this whole concept. We need to completely transition our thinking away from enlightenment as a psychological thing, like a change in your thoughts or your mood, and look at what's defined here as a biological mutation. According to UG's account, this is a fundamental, physical, and physiological shattering of the body. It is completely unrelated to a psychological shift. You can't think your way into this. You can't meditate your way into it. It's described as this painful bodily override that literally blasts every single cell. The body goes through a catastrophic overhaul. It's almost like an entirely new operating system is being violently installed into the hardware of the human form, totally independent of human will or thought.
Section 3. The 49-minute death.
Now, if this mutation sounds intense, just wait until we look at the absolute climax. The sources outline this specific, terrifying window of time, anchored by a really fascinating number, 49. UG Krishnamurti was exactly 49 years old when this ultimate transformation hit him, and the bizarre physical death process that he endured, which was the absolute peak of this cellular blasting, lasted for precisely 49 minutes. It's such an incredible, highly specific detail, and it really underscores just how clinical and mechanical this event was reported to be. It wasn't some vague, floaty, timeless feeling. It was a measurable, timed, grueling physical event.
Let's actually walk step by step through the grueling physical phases of this mutation as they're detailed in the text. So, step 1 is the incubation period. The sources describe this as a time of immense physical suffering, marked by constant severe headaches. The brain was quite literally preparing for a reboot. Then comes step 2, the 49-minute death process. This is where the physical body shuts down entirely, undergoing an intense, life-threatening crisis. And finally, step 3, a total chemical change. Coming out of those 49 minutes, UG's body had fundamentally altered its internal chemistry. The old engine was gone. A completely new, biologically distinct machinery was now running the show.
Section 4. Glands take control. So, now what's really interesting here is the biological aftermath. If the old system of the body was driven by human thought and ego, well, what happens when all of that is destroyed? The answer actually lies deep within our endocrine system. The physiological symptoms were super specific. The fallout included this intense, lingering pressure in the head and radical, permanent changes to how his senses process the world. But here's the crazy part. Specific ductless glands literally hijacked his body. The thymus gland, which is usually only highly active in childhood to build up your immune system, was suddenly reactivated. And the pituitary gland, which is often referred to in mystical traditions as the third eye, well, it basically took over the regulatory control of the body, now that the constant interference of human thought had been wiped out. And as a direct result of this glandular takeover and biological fallout, his body began to express itself in some truly bizarre, unprompted ways. The sources describe how UG's hands would naturally and involuntarily form mudras. Now, if you know traditional yoga, mudras are deliberate mystical gestures practiced by seekers. But for UG, there was no practice, there was no conscious intent. His hands were simply contorting into these shapes as a biological reflex. His physical form had just fallen into a completely new involuntary rhythm, directed entirely by this newly activated glandular system.
Section 5. The Irreversible Alchemy.
As we bring all these puzzle pieces together, we really have to look at the final resolution of this event. Because what does it actually mean to undergo a total chemical change? Well, the crucial point is that it results in an irreversible alchemy, leaving zero room for the I. Really think about what that means. It isn't a temporary state of mind that you can just lose if you're having a bad day. When your body undergoes a chemical explosion and a biological mutation of this magnitude, the ego, that sense of I or self that we all carry around, is permanently eliminated. It doesn't just quiet down. The actual biological hardware required to sustain the ego has been literally destroyed. It becomes physically and biologically impossible for the I to ever reappear. The individual you thought you were is just gone, forever.
Which leads us to this final, really provocative thought. We spend so much time seeking peace, right? Seeking awakening, trying to improve ourselves. But based on this fascinating source material, we really have to ask, if enlightenment isn't some beautiful spiritual awakening, but is actually a brutal, painful biological mutation that completely and permanently destroys the I, do you still actually want it? It's a heavy question for sure, and one that forces us to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about the search for ultimate truth. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it sparked your curiosity as much as it did mine. Keep questioning everything.